build a simple project using Intuiface so that I can go to detail views of images, I'm going to demonstrate that now. So I have a couple images that I've brought into my project of some faces, and we will be using a collection as a way to put those on screen, and then I will be clicking on one of the images in that collection, and that is going to then bring me to a detail scene where I will have the picture big, I will have their name, I will have some additional text about that person, as well as a way to return home. So different ways that we can do that. We can decide which item we want to use on this, whether it's the swap, the grid, the carousel, Ken Burns. I'm going to drag out a circular option here. And then if I go into my content, and this was content I previously brought into my project, and I shift click to select the 4 pictures that I have, I drag those into this collection, and that puts those pictures in the collection so that they will be there, and I can then click on them. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to add a new scene. This will be my detail scene. So I click on new scene. Well, notice that Faces of World War II stayed here in the scene, and that is because that is on my experience layer. Everything we put on the experience layer then lives in all of our scenes. So with that, I'm going to then add in a picture. Oh, no, I don't want to add all the pictures. I'll just add one picture. This will be a picture of Glenn, and we can make Glenn big. Now I want to make this so that it looks like this picture and the name and text, it's all a complete overlay that's popped up. So as I do this, I'm going to make this picture a little bit bigger. We'll add in some text. But what I also want to do is even just add in a simple rectangle. Now if I make this rectangle a little bit bigger than my character, we'll see that Glenn's picture is behind, but that's easily remedied by dragging it to the front. And I get it so it looks like we have a pretty equal spacing between the two. Let's go grab some text. Now the text defaults and to a dark color. I'm going to choose a lighter color for the text, make it much bigger to represent or to display, not represent, display his name. And this first one will be Glenn. So we've put in Glenn's name. And if I'm working from the actual text that is present in my source documents, I will have additional content to put here. And notice we get the little guide, so that allows me to work on my alignment. But this text is now also centering at the bottom, so now we can vertical alignment top, so it aligns with the top, so we'll have that consistent spacing as well. One thing that I can use is a tool called Lorem Ipsum to put in placeholder or default text while I'm blocking in my project. The website is lipsum.com, and then it generates text for you, commonly used by designers when they are filling in projects. So I can right click and copy that text. Let's go back over to Intuiface, and now I can paste that text in. So now I have that text. So I have the name, I have the text, and it's in a new scene. But what I need is I will need a way to get back to my main scene. So if I want to get back to the main scene, what would be nice is I could make a graphic that I could turn into a button. But we also, under these design accelerators, which We have different backgrounds we can work with. We have some different icons and buttons. So I could have a home. If this is going back to my main home, I could certainly put that in. I could also use the little back icon like this, and I can put that in where we can have it on black, or we can have it on blue so it's even a little bit easier to see, or on other colors. I made this box here black, so maybe I want to use the black one, or we could try and put, let's see how the blue one looks, for a return. So that now creates the return, and I'm going to, from a alignment standpoint, align it with the bottom edge of the photo just so we have some visual consistency. Next step, click on this, and now I can click add a trigger. It pulls up my actions. I can click what the action is going to be, click on scene to scene navigation, click go to scene, and I want to select my home scene. Now we notice the other scene on the list, the current one, scene one, I didn't name it yet, so I will want to name it because then it will be easier when we are working with these. Now what I want to, we can choose any type of transition as we go with it. I'm going to use zoom in. Actually, we'll use zoom out because we're going to use zoom in to get here, and now we can close out of this. All right, so this scene is done except for being renamed. I'm going to rename this scene Glenn. If I right-click on Glenn's scene, we can duplicate it. Notice also the keyboard shortcut, Control-D. So Control-D 2 more times. Now this scene, let's go back and look at my content library so I can see the names of the photos. And this will be Katie. And this scene will be Keith. And naming it simply allows you to be able to track what you're doing better. It has no impact on functionality. So this is just something that makes our life easier while we're working with it. Now, if I go into this scene, so I'm now in Scene Lewis, and I can see where it says Lewis. If I go and grab, let's go find Lewis's picture. I'll go, nope, don't want all the pictures. Just click on Lewis and drag out Lewis's picture. There he is. Now I can work on aligning him. So this picture doesn't quite scale the same. So I can decide, do I leave the text the same, or do I make the picture, fill it up, and move the name and text over? And that's what I'm going to elect to do in this case. So I'm going to move those over. And if we hold shift while you're moving it, locks it into a horizontal slide. Now if I look here, we'll see we have Lewis's picture. Now I can see by that icon, this is a picture, so it has the little picture icon on it. So if I look over at my media options, we can see that's the picture icon, so those match. We don't need the picture of Glenn here anymore, so I can just simply delete, goes away. And we need to change the name here to be Lewis. Good part is this button is already going to go back to the home scenes. We don't have to change anything there. That's part of the advantage if you build one and then duplicate it. So now let's go into Katie's scene here. Pull up my content once more. I can, every time I click on a picture, it thinks I want all the pictures. So here's Katie. Katie's picture seems to be cropped about the same size as Glenn. Click on Glenn picture, make that one go away. And now put in Katie for the name there. Now let's go on to Keith. Let's drag Keith out into the mix. You can see that this picture is probably not going to be quite as nice. We can now grab a text, move it over, go back to the Glenn picture, hit delete, and rename it Keith. All right, so these detail scenes are now completed. Now if I go back into my home scene here, on my home scene, let's go click on a picture. So I double click on this picture, So this picture is Glenn. I'm going to click Add a Trigger. And when I click on Glenn, it is going to navigate to a scene, and the scene it's going to go to is Glenn. And this time we will leave it at zoom in since the other one we set to zoom out. Now we go to Katie's picture, add a trigger. So when it's tapped, go to scene, and this time it goes to the Katie scene. And now we go to Keith's picture. When it's tapped, click on scene, go to scene, and this will be Keith. Close, and finally we end on Lewis. Add a trigger, go to scene, and finally, so we can see Lewis, once tapped, goes to scene, scene, Lewis. Close. All right, so we've made some good progress here. So I've set up my scene where I have put in my little kind of swirl of pictures. And we wait for this to load, and then when I click on those pictures, I will be able to go to that scene. So if I click here, we can see it zooms in. Check out Keith, click. Oh, that wasn't quite right. All right, so it turns out when I added in the home button, I think there's some pre-built code attached to it. So it also has the if exit. So let's select that and remove that from here because then that exits us out. So now it just has scene navigation. So then that should work a little bit better. So when I release it, it goes to home scene. So we can see that's how it's going to work on Glenn. So let's go. We'll try it with Glenn's photo first before we fix all the others, just to verify. So when I used a pre-built component, I didn't realize it was going to. So I can click into Glenn, click here, goes out. So now that's working, but if I click on any of the others, that exits out. So that wasn't really a home as much as it's a exit Intuiface icon with a pre-built option. So it is something we need to be aware of when we're doing it, that when we use pre-built, that we sometimes will have things happen that we need to be aware of. So it's important to always be aware of your surroundings while you are working so that when you do something, you are aware of everything that is happening. It also is something to keep track of, that anytime you use pre-built and helpers, that there are situations where it does more than you are expecting. So now I've cleaned up all of the buttons. I'll wait for this to roll through. So now when I click, it goes back there. Now we click on Katie, goes back, click on Keith, goes back, Lewis. So each one of our different images is allowing us to navigate back and forth. Now, if I don't want to use an image collection, if I just wanted to put small versions or even create cropped thumbnails of these images in Photoshop before I come in, so I could just have 4 little pictures and a little blurb or section of text that talked about, hey, these are 4 war heroes that did great things, blah, blah, blah. Click on their picture for more information, and then I would click on that thumbnail and go to it. I could do that as well in lieu of using a collection. Collections are just kind of fun because they're a little more manipulative, especially when we have the helix and the asset grid and flow, etc. So do what you will, figure out the best way to pull it off so that you can create the best experience.